Welcome to the Classical Liberal Arts Academy's Petty School Reading Program. In this lesson, we're going to continue our study and begin learning to read English. In Petty School, we have learned the sounds of Classical Latin and the changes of Ecclesiastical Latin. In Petty School, we have learned the sounds of Classical Latin and the changes of Ecclesiastical Latin. From now on, we're going to study the sounds of English. That's the language that you speak every day. You know how to speak English, but it's very difficult to read English. From now on, we're going to study the sounds of English. If you remember way back to the beginning of Petty School, we talked about St. Alypius and St. Augustine sharing ideas with each other. We learned that to share ideas with others, we use symbols called words. In the picture, Saints Alypius and Augustine are sharing ideas with their words. To share ideas with others, we use symbols called words. We learned that we can share our ideas with spoken words. We can share our ideas with spoken words. And in the picture, you can see St. Alypius with the gold cloak on, sharing his idea with St. Augustine. The spoken word St. Alypius uses is love. St. Alypius has an idea about love and is sharing that idea with St. Augustine with spoken words. You share ideas with spoken words every day. We can share our ideas with spoken words. If you travel around the world, you will learn that in many places, people use different words to speak of the same ideas. People in many different places have the same ideas in their minds, but they share them with different words. In many places, people use different words to speak of the same ideas. This is a very old painting of the apostles seated around the Blessed Virgin Mary. We're going to use this picture to learn about how men share ideas with different words. Look at the man who is speaking with words in the blue box. You can see that that man is saying the word God. God. The word in the blue box is God. Now look over at the man who's speaking in the red box. The man speaking in the red box has an idea of God, but he's speaking in Latin. He uses a different word to speak of that idea. He uses the word Deus. Deus is the Latin word for God. Now look at the man who's speaking in the purple box. He is speaking in the Hebrew language. He's using a different word to speak of God. the word that he speaks is Elohim. Elohim. Elohim is the Hebrew word for God. Now look over at the man speaking in the green box. He is sharing an idea about God, but he's speaking in Greek. He says the word theos. Theos. Theos is the Greek word for God. So here we have one idea, spoken with 4 different words: God, Deus, Elohim, and Theos. 4 different words, but one and the same idea. The men in the picture that we just looked at were speaking different languages. When men in different places use different words to share the same ideas, we say that they speak different languages. You may not know many different languages. You may only know one language. Some children have parents that speak different languages, and when they grow up, they do know different languages. But you probably know only one language. The English language is made up from many different languages. If you speak English, and you do speak English, you speak a language that is made up from many different languages. One of the problems that you're going to have using English is that you don't know those languages. How can you speak in English if you don't know the languages that English is made up of? English is made up from many different languages. And in order for us to learn English very, very well, we need to learn about those different languages. The English language that you speak every day is made up of many different languages. English is made up of words from Greek. English is made up of words from Latin. English is made up of words from French. English is made up of words from German. And English is made up of older forms of English called Old English and Middle English. In order to become very good using English, you're going to have to learn something about Greek, Latin, French, German, Old English, Middle English, and other languages as well. It's very difficult to learn how to use English well, because English comes from many different languages. So we've learned that in some places, people use different words to share the same ideas. These are called different languages. In some places, people use the same language, but they pronounce the words differently. They use the same words, but they don't say them with the same sounds. If you travel to England, people speak English. If you travel to New York, people speak English. If you travel to Texas, people speak English. If you travel to Jamaica, people speak English. If you travel to Australia, people speak English, but none of those people speak English with the same sounds. They all speak the same language, but they pronounce the words differently. When people with the same language pronounce words differently, we call these differences dialects. Dialects. When people with the same language pronounce the words differently, we call these differences dialects. People in England speak with a different dialect than people in New York. People in New York speak with a different dialect from people in Texas. People in Texas speak with a different dialect than people in Jamaica. And people in Jamaica speak with a different dialect than people in Australia. They all speak the same language, but they speak different dialects. When people with the same language pronounce the words differently, we call these differences dialects. Let's use this picture to learn more about dialects. When we studied Classical Latin and Ecclesiastical Latin, we didn't study two different languages. We studied two different dialects of the same language. The language was Latin. The dialects were classical and ecclesiastical. If you look at the picture, you can see that two men are speaking. They are both thinking of the same person, a ruler of Rome. They are both speaking the same language, and they use the same word. But they pronounce the word differently. The man on the left, speaking in the red box, uses classical pronunciation, and he says, Kaisar, Kaisar. The man on the right has the same idea and uses the same word, but speaks in a different dialect. He says, Caesar, Caesar. He speaks with the ecclesiastical dialect. The one man says Kaisar, the other man says Caesar. They both speak the same language, but they use different dialects. We need to make sure we remember these words. Languages, where people speak of the same ideas with different words. And dialects, where people speak with the same words but pronounce them differently. Languages and dialects. Languages and dialects. Can you tell the difference between languages and dialects? Take a few minutes and see if you can explain the difference between languages and dialects. This leads to an important problem for petty school students like you. If English has many different dialects, then how should we read written words in English when there are different dialects? How should we read a word when people pronounce it in many different ways? The word is the same, the letters are the same, but the way that the word is pronounced is not the same. how are you going to read English words that are pronounced in different ways? You should read English words with your family's dialect. The dialect that your family uses, the way your family speaks, is the dialect that you should use when you read English. That doesn't mean it's the only dialect you can use. You can practice reading English words with every different dialect. It may be a lot of fun to practice reading English words with a British dialect, with an Australian dialect, with a Jamaican dialect, or with a New York dialect. You can read English words with any dialect you want. But you should read English words normally with your family's dialect. You should read the words with the sounds that you hear them spoken every day. Your knowledge of spoken words will help you to read written words. Now that we know that we should read English words with our own dialect, let's learn 4 steps that will help us to read English words that we see written. Remember, English is a very difficult language to learn because it comes from other languages and has many different dialects. But there are 4 simple steps that will help us to read English words well. The first step in reading English words is to think of what spoken word you may be reading. Think of what spoken word you may be reading. Remember, written words are only symbols for spoken words. And you know many spoken words. So use your knowledge of spoken words to help you read written words. Step 1 is to think of what spoken word you may be reading. Let's look at an example of how Step 1 helps us to read English words. Remember, Step 1 says to think of what spoken word you may be reading. On this screen, we're going to read the English word written in red. We're reading a part of the Hail Mary. You should know the Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. We're reading in this screen a part of that prayer. You're going to use your knowledge of spoken words to help you read the red word on the screen. The words begin, Hail Mary, full of, and then you need to read the red word. Use your knowledge of spoken words to read the English word in red. Hail Mary, full of, what's that word in red? It's grace. How do you know it's grace? Because you can use your knowledge of spoken words to know what word you're reading. Hail Mary, full of grace. The word in red is red, grace. Let's try another example to see how our knowledge of spoken words can help us read written words. Look at the word written in red on your screen. you can see that it begins with the letter F. The words in black begin, glory be to the, and then the word in red. Glory be to the f. What word is it written in red on your screen? Glory be to the f. The word in red is Father. How do we know that? Because our knowledge of spoken words helps us to read the written word. Glory be to the Father. The word in red is Father. That's easy. Most of the time when you're reading, it won't be as easy as it was in the last two screens. It's pretty easy to read the word that comes after Hail Mary, full of, and say grace. It's pretty easy to read the word that comes after glory be to the, and say Father. But sometimes it's not that easy. What should you do when it's not that easy to read using your knowledge of spoken words? Step 2 says you should read with classical letter sounds. If you can't read the word based on your knowledge of spoken words, you should begin to read the word with classical letter sounds. This will help you to read most English words that come from Latin and Greek. Let's try it out. Look carefully at the red word on your screen. This is an English word. We're going to use classical Latin sounds to read this English word. Point to the letter M and let's read this word together with classical pronunciation. Music, 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 music. Do you know what English word that is? It's the word music. In English, we say music. If we use classical sounds to read this word, we would say musik. Our knowledge of spoken words helps us to see that this word is the word music. We learned that by reading it with classical sounds and then using our knowledge of spoken words to read it in English. Let's try reading another English word using classical pronunciation. Point to the letter M on your screen and let's read this English word with classical sounds. Milk, milk, milk. What English word is this on your screen? It's the word milk. In English, we pronounce this word milk. If we use classical letter sounds to read it, it sounds like milk. But our knowledge of spoken words helps us to see that this is the English word milk. Milk. Sometimes, if you try to read an English word with classical sounds, it won't help you very much. When that happens, read with ecclesiastical sounds. Many English words do not come from classical Latin, but they come from church history and are spoken with church pronunciation. So try reading with ecclesiastical sounds. Let's try. Let's use step 3 to look at this English word. We can read it with ecclesiastical pronunciation. Point to the letter P or P, and we'll read this word together. Pencil, 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 pencil. Do you know what English word that is in red? The English word is pencil, pencil. The ecclesiastical sounds helped us to read it as pencil. But we know from our knowledge of spoken words that it can be read pencil, pencil. Now let's try to read this big word using ecclesiastical sounds. This word is an English word, but our knowledge of the sounds of ecclesiastical Latin and our knowledge of spoken words can help us read this English word. Point to the letter R or R at the beginning of the word and we'll read it together, one syllable at a time. Re, fri, je, ra, tor. Re, fri, je, ra, tor. Refrigerator, refrigerator, refrigerator. Do you know what English word that is? It's the word refrigerator. Refrigerator. In English, we would read this as refrigerator. But our ecclesiastical Latin can help us read it as refrigerator. And that's very close to the English word. If we get that close to the English word, then our knowledge of spoken words can help us read it in English. That's using step number 3. If steps 1, 2, and 3 don't help you to read an English word, you can try step 4. Read with sounds from other languages and other dialects that our English comes from. You can read with the sounds from other languages and dialects our English comes from. The problem with step 4 is that you don't know the other languages yet. You haven't studied them yet. But one day when you do study the other languages, they will help you to read English words. In this lesson, we're going to learn a little bit about some of the dialects that our English has come from. We're going to learn first about Old English. Old English is the dialect of English spoken by King Arthur long ago. It has different sounds than Latin. Many of the sounds are the same, and many of the letters are exactly the same as they are in Latin, but there are some different sounds. Old English is the dialect of English spoken by King Arthur long ago. Let's learn about some of the different sounds of Old English. Look carefully at the letter on your screen. This is a letter from Old English. The name of this letter is ash. Ash. you can see that this letter looks like the letters A and A stuck together. The letter ash is pronounced with the sound ah, ah, ah. That's not a sound in Latin. This is an Old English sound. Ah, the letter ash. Look carefully at this letter on your screen. This is another Old English letter that is not in Latin. The name of this letter is that. That. You can see it looks like the letter D with a line through it. The letter that is pronounced with the sound th, th, or with the sound the. The sounds th and the were not Latin sounds. This is a sound and a letter of Old English, and it will help us to read English words today. That. Th. Look carefully at this letter on your screen. It's another letter used in Old English. But you've seen this letter before. This letter's in the Latin alphabet, and it's the letter F. The difference in Old English is that sometimes this letter is read with the sound V, V. The letter F in Old English can be read V, V. Here's another letter from Old English that you've seen before. In Latin, you learned that this was the letter R, R. And in Old English, it has the same shape, but it's read differently. It's not read R. In Old English, it's read R, R. And anytime you see this letter in Old English, you read it with the sound R, R. Here you can see two letters that you know from Latin. The first letter is the letter E, and the second letter is the letter E. If you read these two letters in Latin, you would read it with the sound ie, ie. In Old English, these two letters were read together with the sound E, E. The letters E and A together in Old English are read with the sound E. Now let's practice reading some Old English words. These Old English words will help us to read English words today. Look carefully at the word on your screen. You can see that there's an Old English letter in red. It's the letter ash. And we learned that it makes the sound ah, ah. Point to the green dot under the letter B, and we'll read this Old English word together. Black, black, black. This Old English word is black, and it's the word where our English gets the word black. You can see the letter ash makes a different sound than Latin vowels make. Ah. This is the word black, black. It comes from Old English. Let's read another Old English word. You can see that there are two letters in red. The first letter in red is the letter R. And remember, in Old English, it doesn't sound like R, it sounds R, R. The second red letter is that, and you can remember that it's read with the sound th. Let's read this word together. Point to the green dot under the letter E, and we'll begin. Eorde, eorde, eorde. This Old English word, eorde, is where we get our English word earth. You can see that the letter R no longer makes the sound R, but makes the sound R. That's a sound we use in English today. And you can also see that the letter that makes the sound th or th that we use today in English. Let's read another Old English word together. You can see there are three Old English letters here that are not in Latin. We have the letter R, which is pronounced R. We have the letter ash, which is pronounced a. And we have the letter that, which is pronounced th or the. Let's read this Old English word together. Point to the green dot under the letter B, and we'll begin. Breath, breath, breath. In English today, we say breath. We speak of our breath. The Old English word was brath, but you can see how the letter R and a and th helps us to read our English today. Those sounds were not in Latin. Old English helps us to read English today. Let's keep reading Old English words. You can see here the letter F is in red. And remember, in Old English, it can be read with the sound v, v. Let's read this Old English word together. Love, love, love. This is where we get our English word love. Love comes from the Old English word love. In this Old English word, you can see the letter R is in red. Let's read it together, just as we would read an ecclesiastical Latin word, but with the Old English letter R. Let's read it together. Chiriche, chiriche, chiriche. This Old English word, chiriche, is where we get our English word church. Chiriche, chiriche, church. Let's read one more Old English word. Here, we'll see how the letters E and A in Old English are read with the sound E. Point to the green dot under the letter F, and we'll read this Old English word together. FOLIE, FOLIE, FOLIE. This is where we get the English word folly. Folly, in English today, comes from the Old English word folie, folie. And you can see that the letters E and A in Old English are read together with the sound E. That would never happen in Latin. The sound E for the letters E and E comes from Old English and helps us to read English words today. So we learned that in Old English there are new sounds that were not in Latin. We learned about the letter ash and the sound a, a sound that was never used in Latin. We learned about the letter thought and the sound th, another sound that was never used in Latin. We also learned that in Old English the letter F could be read with the sound v, something that never happened in Latin. We learned that in Old English the letter R could be read with the sound r. That never happened in Latin. The sound r comes from Old English. Lastly, we learned in Old English that the letters E and A together were read with the sound E. That never happened in Latin. And so in English today, sometimes we see the letters like this read together with the sound E. That comes from Old English. So we learned about Old English. Old English is the dialect of English spoken by King Arthur long ago. It has different sounds than Latin and helps us to read English today. So we've begun to learn about English dialects. English is an old language. It is always changing and has many different dialects. In this lesson, we looked at Old English. In our next lesson, we'll study Middle English. These help us to use step number 4 in reading English words, to think of the other languages and other dialects that English comes from, and use that knowledge to help us read English words today. That was step 4 in reading English words. I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy's Petty School Reading Program. For more resources from the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, visit us online at classicalliberarts.com. God bless.